like the Hindu conception of Maya, the field of space-time that's constantly generating form, human form, planets, atoms, molecules, the whole world of form. Sounded a lot to him like the morphogenetic field idea. So I became fascinated with this idea that there were these scientists out there who were actually drawing inspiration for their ideas from mythology, from the world's sacred traditions, religious traditions. And I just thought that was absolutely fascinating because I had never before heard that scientists were really taking religious ideas seriously. And so that's what sort of led me into this subject, is to find a sort of common ground between cosmology, ancient mythology, and the modern world.
Yeah, I got kind of a common thread with all of these interviewees, except Lynn Margulis. Is that
Margulis.
how she... Margulis, okay. She seemed to be kind of out on a limb there, but maybe that's just my perception, that she kind of was cynical about Sheldrake and Groff and some of the drug boys. Not that Sheldrake was there, but McKenna and Groff, she didn't seem to give them much credence.
Yeah, she's very critical of those people. She is, in a certain sense, she was one of my favorite people to interview because she was so critical of these other people.
Yes.
And at the same time, I think the book needs that criticism. There's always a danger. I was led into these ideas that are generally sort of categorized as New Agey, but not because I was interested in anything New Agey at all, but just because I was following my own track of curiosity that led me into these things. And so when I put the book together, these thinkers just sort of naturally fell into a group that could generally be dismissed, with a wave of the hand as New Age, garbage. But Lynn Margulis is sort of really the only thinker in the book who is, you could sort of say, quote, is a respectable scientist.
Right.
She's an actual practicing scientist. She goes out into the field. She does field work. She works in a laboratory. She's a microbiologist. She's got all these credentials. She's out there on the East Coast. I think she's at Amherst, University of Mass. And then she has this intense criticism. But the reason that she's in the book is because she's the co-creator of the Gaia hypothesis that got picked up by a lot of the New Agey types who weren't really interested in the scientific or cosmological aspects of Gaia. They just liked the sort of sound of the idea of Mother Earth, and so it sort of fit in with that ecological paradigm. But she isn't interested in any of that at all. And she came to the Gaia hypothesis in tandem with James Lovelock, who is an atmospheric chemist, another university, sort of academic scientist. Although both of these people are fringe people, even within the academic world, they have had to fight to make themselves credible within the scientific community itself. So even within the academic world, James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis have been marginalized as a result of proposing new ideas. And academics and scientists are always resistant to new ideas. They're always locked into the past. And, if you look back at the evolution of education and pedagogy, the entire university system in the Middle Ages was invented to explore the curriculum of Aristotle. And it took these academics centuries to dislodge that mentality that Aristotle was the final word. And you get these fringe people like Descartes, coming in, or Newton coming in with universal gravitation, or, Descartes with the theory of vortices spinning through matter. And, these ideas weren't taken seriously at all. So they had to fight the academics. Copernicus, for example, is a fascinating case because he was afraid. He was a canon in the church. He was a very religious man. And here he had this, sun-centered hypothesis that the church really liked and was very interested in having him publish his idea, because they were trying to reform the calendar, and they couldn't get the length of the year worked out, and they thought that the heliocentric hypothesis might solve that problem for them. So Copernicus had all these friends in the church, and they were encouraging him to publish his work, so there was no danger there whatsoever from the point of view of the church. But the reason Copernicus never published his work is because he was afraid that academics entrenched in Aristotle would laugh at him. So he waited until, his deathbed to publish his book on the revolution of the heavenly bodies. So, getting back to where I started with Lynn Margulis, she is definitely sort of the odd one out of the group.
I loved the information, and for that reason, that it gave it a ground. It really did. It did seem to tie it into that scientific community, which is what I like so much about the book. Yes, I don't like to get so far out into the New Age that it isn't information that's accessible to everyone, and I feel like that book really does round that out. It does seem like William Irwin Thompson, also had to really advocate for himself and his ideas with academia. I mean, he went all over the place trying to get those ideas accepted and standing his ground.
Yes, Thompson is someone who, he's in many ways my favorite figure of the book. Because he has this mentality that is a generalist, and I'm always attracted to generalists rather than specialists, to begin with. But number two, I mean, he just had this courage where, he started as an English professor at MIT, and he went to MIT, he said, because he was interested in learning something about science. And he was willing to teach English to engineering majors in exchange for learning about new ideas. But what he found there was nothing but a sort of technocratic mentality that, all problems must be solved by creating new and better machines and reducing everything to matter and logic. And he just met with all this resistance to, these sort of poetic, mystical ideas that he had, and he just left there. And that was like 1967, 68. He left MIT, went out to Esalen, and, that was just coming into being, became friends with Michael Murphy. And then he wandered around the world looking at all these counterfoil institutions that were coming into being during that time. You had you had Ojai out here on the coast, and the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in Pondicherry in India. He went out there for a while. He went to visit Paolo Soleri out in northern Arizona there. Just sort of went all over, and then decided to, instead of going back to the university, he decided to walk out on the university, leave that behind, and create his own counterfoil institution, which he called Lindisfarne, which he named after the monastery. Lindisfarne was the first monastery that was sacked by the Vikings, and so he sort of named it after, because he has these sort of Irish Celtic roots, and founded this thing as a kind of, not really an institution, but a sort of a place where people could come and exchange ideas, cosmological ideas. You could get religious folk there who could come and dialogue with scientists and exchange ideas without the pressure of, the academic world. And so he just sort of built up his worldview based on this ecology of minds, where you don't have this idea that you have a single leader with the mentality of followers, sort of doing whatever he says, but rather you have this guy with a single vision and other people who are coming in contributing to enriching that vision. So you have this kind of a fellowship rather than a followership. And so I really like Thompson for those reasons.
All right. Trying to gauge the break time here so we can make sure to try to get an overview and then go into some specifics, and meanwhile allowing for callers to respond in the second half of the show.
Right.
So I'm trying to find the easiest question to ask you. You ought to see my notes here. It's
I'm
amazing.
not very good at short answers.
No, it's wonderful. Hearing you speak is certainly a wonderful thing for the show today. What do you feel your experience has been with each one of these people? How have your answers been met? How has this enriched your personal experience by speaking to each of these people? And by the way, let me just give an overview of those you did interview. Brian Swim, Rupert Sheldrake, Ralph Abraham, Lynn Margulis, Terence McKenna, Stanislav Grof, Deepak Chopra, and William Irwin Thompson. Is that a good question or a bad question for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I guess the human mind to varying degrees has a disorientation anxiety where, you need a map of what, the human mind, more than any other animal, is open to imprinting. That is to say that we're not sort of biologically programmed just in the sense that we come out, we have all our instincts, and we're ready to go, like the case generally is with animals. We have these instincts, but then we have also this enormous capacity for learning. And the mind wants to know what the cosmos looks like. And so it kind of came out of a kind of disorientation anxiety for, wanting to know what the world looks like and distrusting the sort of authorized, stamped, and sealed version taught by the universities. I just knew that it was wrong. I was a humanities major rather than a science major, but I still knew that the materialistic vision was wrong. And I knew this from, having personal experiences with, things like telepathy and psychic phenomena and the occult. I mean, these are just basic experiences that lots of people have, not everyone, but a lot do have them. So a lot of people know these things are real. But I was looking for a way in which to translate these real experiences into, a kind of conceptual vocabulary, but also a cognitive map that would orient me and give me a sense of, where I'm at as a human being in this cosmos. And so it was really out of that desire that I sort of set about this quest. And I think that they did sort of contribute to they enormously enriched my understanding of the sciences. And that was really more than anything else. I probably never would have even bothered to give science another thought if it hadn't been for these thinkers who were crossing the gap between the humanities and the sciences. So they enrich my knowledge of what's going on in the sciences.
Well, my only regret was that I didn't have more time to actually absorb every word of this book. I have to say, for listeners, we are speaking with John David Ebert, this author of Twilight of the Clockwork God, Conversations on Science and Spirituality at the End of an Age. Let's take a short break and give some time for station ID and give us a breath, and we'll come back and invite you to call in if you wish to ask questions or share your own thoughts and feelings. Meanwhile, you are listening to Alternative Currents. This is WERU FM 89.9 Blue Hill and 102.9 Bangor, your community radio station, the only place I know of around here where you're going to get this kind of information. So support it and be grateful that it's here.